Hey everybody, welcome to Colin Podcasting About Real Estate. This is show 30 and a happy new year to everybody. It is officially 2021, or has been for 5 or 6 days, and I think it's a relief for everybody that 2020 is in the rearview mirror. It is not a year I think any of us would ever want to repeat. A lot of us involved in real estate have been fortunate business wise that the real estate hasn't been bad affected, residential real estate, but it's been the most disruptive time in everybody's lives. I'm very thankful that my family are safe and sound, both my immediate family, my relatives in Ireland and Spain, everybody's doing okay. And I know that hasn't been the case for everybody, but what a year. And I'm glad it's over. And I've got big plans and big hopes and big dreams for 2021. I think this is going to be a huge year. I'm super excited about it. And I hope you can come on the journey with me and let me know how you're doing on yours as well. So my guest today, really good guest to start off the year, is a gentleman called Alex Pardo, based in Miami, Florida. And he got his start in real estate back in 2005 and 6 in the kind of hyper competitive Miami wholesale market. I mean, really epicenter of the craziness back then. So he really got started at a super exciting time. He's also the host of the Flip Empire show and co-founder of Ascend, a high-level mastermind and coaching community for entrepreneurs. So I had a really good conversation with Alex, and he gave a lot of top quality, actionable advice for anybody interested in using real estate to help design the best life for you and your family. And we kind of drilled into a lot of the goal setting and really thinking about what you want out of your life, what you want it to look like. And, fast forward 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 years, where do you want to be? Work backwards from there, find out how real estate and other things in your life can help you get there. But we chatted about his story. He's got a good journey. Started off with a high-flying corporate job at General Electric when he was in his early 20s, quickly realized didn't want to be stuck on that, treadmill for decades. We talked about the lessons he learned from his early mistakes and failures, tips on hiring and incentivizing the right people. Pretty big deal if you're trying to grow a business. How COVID has changed the landscape for flippers and wholesalers. He talks about why he doesn't think residential real estate is going to continue to appreciate in 2021 and beyond, that a 10, 11 year kind of boom has to come to an end sometime, and how you might be able to position yourself to take advantage of that as whatever you are, wholesaler, flipper, buy and hold person. Talk about competing with the corporate buyers out there. There's a lot of big companies buying tens of thousands of units, how you can compete with those. Got some really actionable tips on doing that. Again, for anybody, flippers, wholesalers, buy and hold people, really good advice in there, and just generally developing a positive mindset for 2021 and beyond. So really good show, really good conversation with Alex. I think you're going to enjoy it. Don't forget to check out my website. It's colininvestments.com, COLIN investments.com. I've also revamped the podcast section of the website, which you can access directly now via colinpodcasts.com. So a lot of good stuff in there. I'm going to try and add tons more content this year, tons more videos, reports, obviously podcasts as well. So appreciate you guys checking it out. Don't forget that I'm available for consultation calls, either 20 minutes or 60 minutes. You can find the links on the bottom of the homepage of the website. Just check it out. And I think that's it for me for now. Let's go and have a listen to Alex and see what he has to say. Alex Pardo, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Colin, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm excited to be here, my friend.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So listen, talk to us about yourself, Alex. Tell us, give us an introduction to who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. Born and raised in Miami. As we were talking offline, my entire family comes from Cuba. And, middle class family. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, but I don't necessarily have that rags to riches story, right? That some people do have. But I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. And for me, Colin, I remember when I was 11, 12 years old, I grew up playing a lot of sports. And I was at the ballpark all the time. And I would essentially be buying baseball cards, buying them low and selling them for like 50 cents more, $1 more. And
cool.
When I started doing that, I just caught the bug. I loved buying something low, selling a little bit higher, making a profit. And so I did that for, 2, 3, 4 years while I was at the ballpark, but never really took it serious. And then I got into college, and there was something about what I thought prestige of climbing the corporate ladder. I wanted to be the future CEO or CFO of a big Fortune 100 company, not knowing exactly what that entailed and what that involved. And I
Yeah.
started interviewing with companies like Johnson and Johnson and General Motors and General Electric, and ended up getting accepted into GE's financial management program,
Oh wow.
which essentially was like a 2-year rotational program where they moved me to different parts of the country. And anyways, for me, Colin, 3 months into that job, and I knew I never wanted to work for somebody ever again.
Okay.
So I was averaging somewhere between 70 and 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I've always been pretty good at reverse engineering the process, figuring out what I wanted and then figuring out a plan to get there. And
Mm-hmm.
I specifically remember, Colin, looking at my boss, looking at her boss, and all the way up to like the position I aspired to be in one day. And I thought to myself, there is no way I want to be that person.
Yeah. Price is
I,
too great to pay to get there, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I saw people that would get let go after being with the company for 15, 20, 25 years. And I realized that people find security in working for somebody and having a job. And for me,
Yeah.
that was the ultimate insecurity. So I'll kind of pause here, but I finished up that 2-year program. I made a commitment, and so I finished that off. And in the meantime, I was reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich. And so I knew I
Yep.
wanted to get into real estate. I just didn't know how. I remember buying a Carlton Sheets course on no money down, and
Okay.
I thought that real estate investing was all about like assuming loans. And
Yeah.
I was just getting educated while I was still working at GE. And January 2005, I ended up, firing my boss, quitting, and moving back down to South Florida to eventually start a real estate business.
Funny. So you even 3 months after joining, you realized this is not for me, but you stuck at it for those 2 years. Why was that? Was that just because they'd hired you on good faith and you wanted to go back, or
Yeah,
did you decide to give it a second chance and see if it got
that
better?
that's a great question, and honestly, one that I don't think I've ever been asked before. There's a couple reasons I decided to stay, because there's certainly merit and there's certainly an argument for saying, hey, if this is not what you want to do, why delay the inevitable and just move back down to South Florida? I
Mm.
wanted to make sure. I'm somebody that, to me, my biggest, I hate to call it a fear, I don't want to ever live with regret. And even though I knew that's not what I wanted to do, it was my first time living away from home, at
Okay.
22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
First time moving from Miami. And so I was meeting a lot of people. I was traveling. I was enjoying the experience. I just wasn't enjoying what I was actually doing. And I said, I gave these people my commitment. They made a pretty significant investment in me to hire me. There's only a certain number of spots available that they hire for this particular program every year. And
Yeah.
so, I gave them my word, and I said, let me just take the most out of this. And I'm glad I did. And let me use this time to just get educated in what my next, phase of my career going to be ultimately.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And something you said a minute ago struck with me as well, how the kind of corporate job, especially with big companies like GE, are perceived as safe. It's the safe kind of low
Mm.
risk option where you have a kind of a path that you can go towards. If you work your butt off and have a little bit of luck, you'll do well and get into those good salaries and bigger house and all the rest of it. But you say that that actually was the risky option for you, and that leaving and starting your own
Yeah.
business was a lower risk. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I was very clear on what I wanted and what I didn't. Sometimes I talk to people and they say, how do you figure out what you want? And if you're struggling figuring out what you want, you might want to reverse it. Try to figure out what you don't want, and then sometimes you're going to back into what you actually do want. And I knew that for me, the fact that I had to go to my boss and say, hey, can I take a week's vacation? So in the corporate world, at least with GE, even though I technically had 2 weeks of vacation, I quickly found out that it was frowned upon if you actually like used it. And
Yeah.
so, and I realized that it was there was a lot of politics, and it was the perception. So even though I could get my work done in, say, 4 hours, I still had to be there 10 to 11 hours to show face. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it just didn't feel good to me. I felt like I was hitting a ceiling, and I
Yeah.
realized that if I want to live life on my terms, if I want to travel 3 to 6 months of the year, if I want to have a big impact on people's lives, which early on, I've always wanted to help people in some way. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that working 8 to 12 hours for somebody else and then them dictating to me my schedule.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just realized it just wasn't for me, you know?
Yeah. No, and I think we're both of a similar mindset there as well. I worked in kind of big companies in London while I was about that age, 22, 23, and quickly realized it wasn't for me, but
Yeah,
I'm glad I did it, you know? So
same.
where did you go afterwards? You went back to Miami to where your family was and decided
Yeah.
to start out. What did you do? Did you try and wholesale a
Yeah.
couple of
So
deals? How'd it work?
no, interesting question. So I actually, I was single. I moved back to Miami. And by the way, so a big motivating factor for me at this point was that I was moving back into my parents' house. I was 24 years old, and that was not a good look. And that was motivating me. It wasn't exactly the plan for my life to be 24 years old, moving back in with my parents after graduating with a double degree and the whole nine. And I had the opportunity to travel. A buddy of mine invited me to go backpack around Europe. So I
Cool.
decided to do that. I did that for 3.5 months. And one of my fork in the road moments was towards the tail end of that trip. I had essentially funded the whole thing on a credit card. I didn't really have much money. I was in an internet cafe in Ibiza, and a friend of mine sent me an email and said, "Hey, I'm attending this marketing for deals boot camp in Atlanta next month. Do you want to go? It's
Mhm.
$997."
Okay.
And at the time, I remember vividly thinking, "There's no way I'm going to put another $1,000 on my credit card." I didn't have any money, but I also knew, hey, this trip is going to be over in about a couple of weeks, and I'm going to be moving back into my house with no plan on what I'm going to do. And I've always wanted to get involved in real estate. I've been reading books. I've been getting educated. Let me just, I'll pay the 997. I'll go and I'll learn. Well, I'm glad I did, because I literally plucked out one of the pre-foreclosures letters in the manual. I
Hmm.
learned about how to market for deals, and I learned about motivating sellers and why they would sell at a deep discount. And I didn't have any money. So, Colin, it was so ghetto. I took the pre-foreclosure letter and I made photocopies where you could see the black three ring. Like that's how bad my letter was. And I started stamping and stuffing envelopes in my
Okay.
kitchen counter in my parents' house at 25 years old. And I started sending out mailers, about 300 and something pre-foreclosures. And
Hmm.
2.5 months later, I closed my first deal. We made $44,000, and
Nice.
that was the launching pad to. From that point forward, I think my first year I did somewhere north of, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 15 deals. My first in real estate.
That's a lot. You said we made $44,000. So did you have a business partner back then, or a couple of business
No,
partners?
no. So I didn't have a business partner, but and we can dive into this more if you want. I was afraid. My first
Hmm.
deal was a short sale, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was like literally failing forward. I was learning on the fly, and so I
Yeah.
brought in a friend of mine as a partner,
Okay.
because he had done some deals prior to me, and so I ended up bringing him on. Looking back, I know I could have closed this thing myself, but
Hmm.
fear was a real thing on my first deal. So I brought in my friend, and we ended up partnering on the deal, and we split the $44,000.
I mean, look, it makes a lot of sense when it's your first deal or first couple of deals to bring in someone who has knowledge and knows how to avoid some pitfalls that you might fall into because
Yeah, yeah.
that's, yeah, I mean, yeah, hindsight is great saying I could have kept the 44 for myself, but there's also a chance you might have lost the deal and not made anything,
I'm
you know?
I'm glad it played out the way I did. I definitely learned some things working with him. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, Colin, was that you can't let fear hold you back. And
Hmm.
that could be a whole nother podcast and seminar, right? And I think
Yeah.
so many people fail to get started in this business or anything they want to pursue because of the perception of fear. And I realized that it wasn't as complicated as I was making it out to be in my head. And
Mm.
so yeah, that was a big learning lesson for me.
That's it. I mean, most of those fears are in your head that they rarely manifest themselves when you roll up your sleeves and just get into the nuts and bolts of doing what you're afraid of doing. I mean, so did you just have that in you naturally, or did you have some encouragement from someone, or did you just battle your way through it and just
Yeah,
work?
again, going back to when I was a kid, I've always been the ready, fire, aim type of guy.
Uh-huh.
Like what it for me, it's all about deciding and committing that I want to do something. Once I actually make that commitment and decision, there's no looking back. Now, again, there's a few times, admittedly, where that's kind of bitten me in the butt. 2007, right before the market shifted, I decided to get involved in my first rehab on a half million
Right.
dollar project. I
Oof.
shouldn't have done ready, fire, aim. I should have aimed a lot and then fired. But that's just always been my makeup and personality. So I'm just not much of a procrastinator. When I decide and commit, I kind of just immerse myself and then I figure it out from there.
Yeah. So how did you scale up your wholesaling business? It sounds like you got off to a flying start. What are you, 14, 15 deals a year? And this is when, back in 2005, 6?
2006. So I attended
And
that
in
boot camp
Miami?
in Miami. Correct. Yeah,
Yeah, busy,
October
busy time.
2005 was the boot camp. We closed that deal January '06. So
Okay.
yeah. So I didn't. I was a one man show, Colin, for the first 3 to 4 years. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
literally just me. And then I read Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, and my
Mm.
head was like, wow, I can hire a virtual assistant. Incredible. Like it was like,
Yeah,
this was
great book.
groundbreaking for me. So I hired a virtual assistant. And then I realized that wholesaling and fixing and flipping, these are transactional businesses, right? It's rinse and repeat. And I was getting tired of doing everything, the marketing, taking the calls, going on appointments, the selling. Like
Yep.
point where I remember at the time I was single, 2010, 11, I'd be on a date and I had just finished sending out a couple thousand mailers and was just going crazy in the middle of a date. And that was like the pain point for me. I said, I got to solve this problem. So 2012, I was focused on just building a team to do wholesaling transactions here in South Florida. So I hired a virtual assistant, then I hired an acquisitions manager, I hired a
Okay.
dispositions manager, and I started building out the team from there.
That's awesome. And give us a bit of context because I haven't really asked many people about that. How crazy was Miami real estate back in 2006?
It was crazy. It was absolutely insane.
That's kind of the
The
epicenter
big
of the epicenter, you know?
Yeah, the big thing was pre-construction when I got in 2005, 2006, so you could essentially put a contract on a pre-construction condo here in Miami and 6 months later sell it for 50 or $100,000 more. And there was people going crazy doing that. And then obviously we know what happened in 2007 and a lot of people lost their shirts. And then there was a lot of fraud going on, what you call straw buyers. There was people that made $30,000 to $40,000 a year and they were qualifying for $500,000 loans,
Yeah.
and unfortunately South Florida has a really bad rap. There was a lot of fraud going on, and I just completely stayed away from the fray, and I just kind of put my head down and I was just focused on wholesaling. And then I
What kind
learned
of
how to
deals were you
fix.
wholesaling? Were you doing the pre-construction stuff or were you just kind of
No,
looking for, kind of
pre
distressed, kind of difficult to sell homes?
yeah, my first year, pre foreclosure was my main focus. And
Okay.
then I quickly learned that, there people are distressed for any number of reasons. And then I started marketing to probates. I started marketing to people that inherited properties, out of state owners. But yeah, the first year, 2006, was pretty much all pre foreclosures.
Okay. Yeah. No, crazy times. And so so you just ran with that. I mean, did the financial crash scare you a lot? I mean, what challenges and kind of lessons can you recall from those early years?
Yeah, really good question, Colin. I think the first lesson learned was that up until 2007, I always saw coaches and masterminds and mentors. I saw them as an expense, not as
Hmm.
an investment. And
Hmm.
you and I both know that they're the best investment you can make is in yourself. And when I took down that $500,000 property and I rehabbed it, I brought on a partner and we ended up funding $102,000 of our own capital into that deal.
Okay.
And long story short, we lost it. We
Oof.
completely lost it. So I lost $51,000, and it was the biggest blessing up until that point. Believe it or not, it wasn't all the deals I had closed. It wasn't the money I made, but that was the catalyst for me saying, had I had a coach or a mentor on my side, I wouldn't have gotten into that deal. And so I
Right.
immediately hired a coach. I joined the mastermind. And since then, since 2008, I have either worked with a coach and or been part of a mastermind. So, 12 years now, going on
Hmm.
13 years, that it's just one of those things that to me, it's like the ultimate insurance policy.
Yeah, I
So
agree. And so, aside from getting a coach to kind of nudge you along a kind of path of progress, I mean, what other mistakes did you make, or what kind of stuff, what advice do you have for people to, to
yeah,
avoid those types of things that you and I might have done back
a,
then?
a lot. In 2007, I completely turned a blind eye to the fact that there was something weird going on. Like, how can somebody that makes $10 an hour qualify for a three, four, $500,000 loan? So I wasn't paying attention to any of the just the market, the economy, what was going on locally. I was turning a blind eye to it.
Yeah.
Real estate is a business. It's a fantastic business, and it's a forgiving business because we can make mistakes in a good market and still get paid to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. And in other words, you can
Yeah.
contract the property, screw up on the numbers. And if you're in a hot market 6 months later, if it took you an additional 3 months to sell, you're probably making more money because the property appreciated. Right. But it's
Yes.
also a business that when things turn, you're doing, you can really get hurt. And so I would have been paying attention to inventory, what's going on locally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Monitoring days on market, monitoring prices. I was just hustling. I was just going. And so that's a mistake I vowed never to make again.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only deal that I've lost money on since I got started in real estate, which is great.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of mistakes. Working with the right people, I got involved in a couple of joint venture deals that went south, where fortunately I didn't lose money, but we didn't make money because I was involved with people that, there was an alignment of the vision and alignment of core values and goals. And
Mm-hmm.
so, man, I can answer any specific questions you have, but there's a ton that I've learned, and I continue to make mistakes. That's one thing I realize, is that I don't know it all. I'll never know it all. And if you have that mentality and mindset, that's when you're doomed to fail at at the largest scale, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, the joint venture thing again, it's very common to do joint ventures in your early days before you scale up and you have your own money and your own private lenders and you're doing your own deals with your own team. It's very common to do joint ventures, and I did a lot of them, or a handful of them, in the early days, but it's a lot of times it don't work out. And I've never been able to put my finger on how do you spot a good joint venture partner from one that's going to give you a lot of grief. I mean, do you have any
Yeah,
advice
yeah,
for me there?
absolutely. I would ask yourself, the first thing I would ask is, when I consider a joint venture, is, why do I want a potential joint venture partner? In other words,
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself, is it fear-based, like for me it was in 2005, 2006?
Okay.
Or do they bring something to the table that I don't have? It could be a skill set. It could be knowledge in a particular industry. It could be relationships. It could be capital. So make sure that if you're going to joint venture, first of all, my humble opinion, is not to jump into a business partnership. Date before you get married. So if
Yep.
I see so many people getting started, and they establish a relationship or a friendship with another investor in town, and they decide to like join forces and start a business, I think it's probably more prudent to, do some joint venture deals, work together, make sure before you get involved in a business partnership. Partnerships can be messier than actual marriages at times. I mean, it's a
Mm.
business marriage. So to answer your question specifically, make sure there's an alignment of core values. Make sure that you guys have the same goals or similar goals. Make sure there's a division of roles and responsibilities, right? Like, so I am responsible for this. I'm going to be held accountable to this. You're responsible for this. You're going to be held, and then make sure and hold yourself accountable. Obviously, make sure that the communication is strong. Lines of communication are open, whether a
Mm-hmm.
deal is going great or whether a deal goes south. I can deal with hiccups and challenges. What I
Sure.
can't deal with is working with someone where the lines of communication aren't open, or they're just not being forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just getting all of that out on the open and discussing that prior to getting involved in any JV is probably a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I like it. And let me ask you another question on kind of hiring, because it's such a crucial part in building a scalable business, and also, as you mentioned, getting your life back and not getting interrupted by 20 phone calls during your special date. So
Yeah.
can you talk to us a bit more detail about the first handful of people you hired, or who the key people you hired, and what kind of compensations and incentives you offered to attract the right ones and keep them?
Yep, absolutely. I could probably write a book on the mistakes I've made when it comes to hiring. I early on, if I was experiencing overload, or I was feeling overworked, or there was something I didn't enjoy doing, I would just my objective was to quickly find somebody to fill that and take away that pain, with
Mm-hmm.
regard to, are they the right fit? Again, is there a core value alignment? Do they have the right skill set? In other words, I was trying to hire fast, and then I was compounding the mistake by firing slowly, when I knew in my
Right.
heart of hearts it wasn't going to work out. And a coach many, many years ago, I'm sure you've probably heard this, is you want to reverse that equation. You want to hire slowly and then fire quickly, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
know it's not going to work. So my first hire was a virtual assistant. I think I was paying $10 an hour for a VA out of India. Uh,
Okay.
a resource I learned about from Tim Ferriss's book, and hiring this person, Colin, and then not having a game plan. I just kind of thought that if I hired them, they should kind of know what they were going to do. And looking back, it's just so foolish, right, to think of it like that. So whenever you're thinking of hiring, think about if our revenue generating activities, RGA, right? So like,
Okay.
what are the things that you do that produce revenue within your company that also happen to be in overlap with your unique ability? So I don't want to get sidetracked, but I will mention that I think it's critical for people to figure out what their unique ability is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my belief is we've all been given, God has given us gifts and talents, and it's your job to figure out what your talents are, and then spend time doubling, tripling down on your talents, not trying to improve your weaknesses. We all
Mm-hmm.
have weaknesses. I don't think it makes sense to work on trying to improve those. So figure out one of the exercises I always tell, I always give coaching clients is, on a sheet of paper on Excel, write down on one column the things that are revenue generating activities that you enjoy. On the second column, what are the revenue generating activities that you do that you don't enjoy? And then the third column is non-revenue generating activities you do that you enjoy. And then lastly, non-revenue generating activities that you do that you don't enjoy. And
Okay.
your job should be to outsource the things that are non-revenue generating that you don't enjoy. Start there, and then figure out, like, what are these tasks and responsibilities. Like, I've always thought that hiring an assistant or a virtual assistant, if you're just getting started, is probably going to be your best hire initially.
Okay.
And then offload a lot of the things that have to get done, but don't necessarily have to get done by you. But before you hire, make sure that you have a standard operating procedure for how to do certain things. Make sure that you have clearly defined roles and responsibilities, so that you don't make the mistake I did, which was I hired him and then I tried to figure things out as I went along. And oftentimes they were kind of waiting on work, but I didn't have a plan for them. There wasn't an onboarding system, in other words.
Yeah, people kind of forget to do that preparation beforehand, and I certainly have over the years. I didn't have an owner's manual, an operating manual, a 10-point checklist to do this task, and then a list of tasks and what order they should
Right.
be done, and how you tell me they're done and how I double check they're done. I mean, none of that was in place, but obviously, like you say, if you do it, then it's a lot easier to maximize the productivity from your staff,
Yeah,
and keep them happy, because people want clear
that's right.
instructions on what they should do, and a pat in the back when you tell them it's a job well done, right?
Yeah. If you hire somebody and they fail, they didn't fail, you failed them, right? Because ultimately, all this falls on you. You're the one that decided to hire them. So, when we hire people in our company, number one, again, I've mentioned this before, but we have our core values, and that's the first box that has to get checked. Do they match our core values? Do they match the culture of the business of the company? How are they going
Mm-hmm.
to work with other people? How are they going to play in the sandbox, so to speak? And then we look for, do they possess the skill set, and do they have the experience required for whatever particular role you're hiring? And so now we take them through a very specific process to make sure that they check all those boxes. When I first started hiring, I would just place an ad, and then I would get completely inundated with a bunch of resumes. And
Right.
then I realized that I just created an extra job for myself of reading resumes and then getting back to them. It was just highly inefficient. And then I created a simple web form where they had to complete the web form and
Okay.
take a disc test, or depending on the role, send me a 2 to 3 minute video
Oh,
on essentially selling themselves. And so I
interesting.
realized that 1 or 2% of the people that actually see the ad will complete those steps. So now I took my funnel down from like people sending me all these resumes to just a few that are actually going to do the 2 or 3 steps that I'm asking.
That's a great idea. Send them a little video, answer specific questions, because it takes them, you can forward 10 CVs in 20 seconds and bombard guys like you. But yeah, I love
Yep,
that idea. That's a great idea. And then you get the really interesting people to look through and avoid the other 90%.
that's right.
So
Yep.
I love that. So, and I mean, once you get that, once you've got them through that funnel and you're looking at interesting people, I mean, how do you figure out what compensation to give them, or how to give them share the pie for making profits for the business?
Yeah. So for each position, we kind of have a framework or a baseline for compensation. So I'm not one, and I've learned this the hard way. I think people make a mistake where they try to go cheap when they hire,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's the wrong mindset to have. You need to be figuring out how can you highly incentivize the people that you're bringing on your team. And by the way, as a side note, not everybody is motivated by money. Most
Mm-hmm.
people, a lot of people, I would say, are motivated by money, but sometimes people are motivated by more intrinsic things. It could be a pat in the back, it could be public recognition. So uh, that through personality assessments, you can really figure out, but that speaks more to leadership and management and all that. But yeah, look, for acquisitions managers, for example, when I first started hiring, we were paying 15% of the gross profit. So
Okay.
if we closed a $10,000 deal, let's just say, for simple math, they're making $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a tiered based. One of the mistakes I made was I would incentivize my acquisition manager based on the number of deals closed per month, but sometimes a small deal or a couple small deals, and he would get incentivized versus doing it based on the revenue that the company generated or that the acquisition manager generated. So sales positions, are ranging anywhere between 5% up to 20%.
Okay.
Depending on what the role is. And again, I
Mm-hmm.
like your base comp model where they can earn more by producing more.
That's awesome. So how big were you able to scale up your real estate business or your wholesale
Yeah.
business in the end?
So, and this may kind of shock you and surprise you, but so to answer your question specifically, we got to 9 people, which is, you
Pretty
know,
decent, yeah.
yeah, I mean, for some people that's very small. For other people, that's a lot. So 2017, 18 is when I really got serious about, I want to I want to scale the operation. And we got to the point where in 2019, my overhead had ballooned from $5,000 a month to somewhere between $40 and $45,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that as you scale, it's not as sexy as it sounds. When you scale and you bring on more people, overhead goes up, your margins tend to shrink, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
moving parts.
Yeah.
So even though I wasn't the one on the phone anymore doing the marketing, talking to sellers, talking to buyers, I had people that were doing that heavy lifting.
Yeah.
It wasn't the vision I had for my business and for myself. And so I started the process late last year of kind of unwinding that scaling.
Okay.
And I got to the point where I just wanted a simple, highly profitable, high margin business that more suited my vision. We can get into that if you want, but yeah, I got all the way up to 9 people.
So how many deals a month did you need to do to justify the
Two.
having 9 people?
Yeah, two. Our average profit per transaction here in South Florida is roughly about $20,000.
Okay.
And so, yeah, 2018, 19, we had to close 2 deals a month just to break even, like
Okay.
just to make sure. And that was a big aha moment for me. I said, man, it's more stressful when you have to close deals just to break even. And not just that, but you have to make sure that your team is getting paid and that they're eating and that there's room for growth. And so, man, to
And
be
just dealing
honest,
with people problems as well, not just property problems, just people problems, right? That's a
that
whole
that
other thing.
that's a whole nother thing. You're 100% right. Yeah. Again, now you become a manager and a leader, and there's so many human resources challenges that come into the equation when you start building a team. So, yeah, man, I've learned a lot throughout the years, but people talk about scaling, they make it sound real sexy, and I'm not saying not to scale. I'm just saying if you're gonna scale, do it for the right reasons. You know.
Yeah, I agree, and it's funny. Your story seems to be having some parallels with mine. That I've been on a big descaling kind of mission the last 6-7 months as well. And so, talk to me about what you decided once you saw your business getting bigger and more complicated. It sounds like you decided to pivot.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
happened?
So February 2019, I was in Guatemala for a friend of mine, Steve Kavanaugh, puts on something called Master Mission, which is it's a half mastermind, half mission trip. And
Hmm.
the day we were masterminding, and I remember when it was my share, my hot seat, I wasn't really sure what I was going to talk about because things were going well technically, but something felt like it was missing. Like
Hmm.
the business had just kind of gotten complicated. There was a lot of moving parts. I didn't like the fact that I had to close two $20,000 deals just to take care of overhead. And, so I kind of shared with people that, hey, something is missing in the equation. Technically, I'm successful, especially from the outside looking in, but this is not the kind of business I want. But to a certain degree, Colin, it gets attached to your identity to us, and
Yeah.
I've been hosting a podcast for 4 years and I talk a lot about it. And so Um, I just shared with them that I felt like I was being called to do something bigger with my life, and like I was feeling like I wanted to go in a little bit of a different direction. And so from that point, fast forward 4 months, I kind of realized that where I got a lot of joy and fulfillment was in helping others and doing what we're doing now, hosting my podcast, being on other people's shows, coaching, leading. That's what I really enjoyed. So my partner and I, Steve Kavanaugh, we launched a coaching and mastermind business called Ascend,
Okay.
June of 2019, and so that's going very well. And then June of this year, I ultimately decided to completely get out of the wholesaling operation. I came to an agreement with my COO where he was going to kind of move things forward, and he kind of retained me as a consultant.
Mhm.
So I haven't left real estate. In fact, I still have rentals in Cleveland. I'm looking at storage deals. I'm still doing some lending and some JVs when it makes sense. But I like being able to do deals on my terms, not because I have to spend all this money and feed this machine and this beast that I have created.
So yeah, it's really interesting. So I like that a lot. So what can you give us an example of a deal that you're now doing on your own terms and suits you kind of personally that
Yeah.
wouldn't have been in your last business? What does that
Yeah,
look like?
so late last year, I found a really good rental property in Cleveland. So we're buying rentals in a particular B neighborhood. So
Okay.
a neighborhood that you and I would sleep comfortably in, and we'd buy a house or rent a house if we wanted to.
Hmm.
And so I had some capital tied up on some other projects, so I brought in a joint venture partner that funded the deal, 100% of the purchase price, 100% of the rehab,
Nice.
and essentially I would just manage the construction from afar. And so I hired a boots on the ground guy to take care of it. So that's a very simple example of I look for deals where I can tap into my strengths of
And so this
finding
is
deals.
effectively a buy and hold
Yeah,
deal that
yeah.
you're involved in. Okay.
This one's a buy and hold. Yeah. So we worked out a percentage equity and cash flow for him funding the deal.
Sure.
And yeah, so I'm a big fan of, like I said, going back to our joint venture conversation, doing deals when I get to tap into my genius zone, when I get to tap into my strengths, the things I enjoy that give me energy, versus getting involved in deals just because I can make more money, even though it might drain me from energy. So I'm very clear on, again, like what I want, what I don't want to fit that box. And I'm not willing to get involved in a business or a deal just because I can make money if it violates my vision.
Okay. So do you see yourself moving more into the buy and hold kind of side and moving away from the transactional kind of flipping, wholesaling, and just focusing on your coaching and adding to your personal portfolio?
Yeah, 100%. The transactional side of the business, I've been there, done that, and it was a great business, and it produced a lot of cash throughout the years. And
Hmm.
but it doesn't excite me anymore. The business, honestly, Colin, the wholesaling business, after 15 years of doing it, and I feel bad kind of admitting this, but it's the truth. It got kind of boring.
Sure.
It didn't excite me anymore.
I mean, if you get good at something and scale it, it's because I mean it has to get boring. I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise, if you're trying something new all the time, you're not going to be me scaling, really, are you? You have to.
Correct, correct. And by the way, I want to make the point that boring is not bad. Simple is good.
Yeah.
But I wanted to change the pace, and I wanted to do something that was more, again, wholesaling, fixing and flipping. It's great to generate cash, but that's not how you build wealth. You build wealth through owning real estate, through ultimately cash flowing, producing assets. And so storage is what really excites me, and that's where my focus is these days, is the storage business.
So where are you hoping? I mean, storage has been pretty competitive business in the last kind of 3, 4 years. Where are you? Where are you looking at to get
Yeah, so I'm,
those
I'm
kinds
looking
of
at the
deals?
southeast region. Florida, Georgia, Alabama,
Hmm.
the Carolinas, Tennessee. So I'm looking at the south, and I'm pretty early on in the process. Again, from learning mistakes from the past, immediately I hired a coach and joined a mastermind. So I believe in just total immersion. I get, maybe that's just my personality. But like I mentioned earlier on, when I decide and commit, I just don't look back, and like I kind of put the blinders on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Good luck with that. Keep us posted on it. I mean, I love storage myself. I'd love to get into it. I don't own any storage, but I like the I love the passivity of it. I love the
Yeah.
idea of owning a concrete shed and just getting a passive income for it. You know,
No
some lot.
tenants, no toilets, lien laws. It's you don't have to go through an eviction process. I mean, there's a lot. And one of the things that was really appealing to me when I started studying different asset classes was that storage, historically speaking, does very, very well in down markets. And they continue to do well in great markets as well. And I do believe at some point, I don't have a crystal ball, but my suspicion tells me sometime in 2021, the market will shift.
Yeah, I mean, is there a specific storage size you're looking at that's kind of under the radar of the big boys and maybe above the radar of the small guys?
Yeah, so at least 20,000 square foot facilities. Looking
Okay.
for value add opportunities where there's expansion for growth, where you can
Hmm.
add square footage. So yeah, I'm primarily looking for the mom and pop operators that might
Gotcha.
not have a website, are still kind of collecting rents on a ledger, right? I mean, that's the ideal person I'm looking to work with. I'm not looking to buy from REITs or the big boys out there.
Okay. And you're using some of those wholesale direct mail skills you developed over the years to find those mom and pops that are that are under the radar.
Absolutely. And I think the underlying point that I'm hoping people kind of draw from your question is that marketing and sales are two skills that my belief is you constantly need to be honing in on, because regardless of whether you're in real estate, storage, fix and flip, wholesale, or any business, marketing and sales is like the foundation. And if you know how to market and you understand sales, you'll never starve.
Yeah, that's the goal. I agree with you. And you mentioned there that you think the market might shift in 2021. I think a lot of me, I certainly thought it was going to shift in like May or June this year when things were
Yeah,
happening in March. I was like, oh my God, this is going nuts very quickly. And obviously the kind of opposite happened. I mean, so we're party can't go on forever. Real estate party, I know a lot of other areas are suffering, retail and hotels, cinemas, lots of other things, but residential real estate's been on a, it's been in fifth gear and sixth gear. So where do you see this going in 2021? What might we want to look out for?
Here's the truth, Colin, and I wish I had a better answer. The truth is, I don't know where it's going, but
Hmm.
I know that it cannot continue to go up. Like you said, we've been on a tear. Real estate has been on a rise since what 2010, 11,
Yeah.
more or less.
Hmm.
And real estate, depending on who you listen to and what you study, some people will say market cycles go in every 10 to 12 years. Other people would say it's more like 16 to 18 years. So especially with the change in leadership,
Sure.
Biden now running the country, or at least that's what it definitely looks like. I think the market will change here in 2021. I know something's coming. I know many people in my masterminds and networks are gearing up for a flood of pre foreclosures and for
Okay.
many defaults that are coming.
Hmm.
So, but it goes back to, if you know how to market, it's just about shifting your message to reach the right market at the right time. I mean, that's what marketing is really all about.
Yeah, I mean, you develop the skills and you network with smart people so that you can pivot and adjust that marketing to whatever you need. If pre foreclosures are rising, you do one thing. If they're not, you do another thing. But yeah, you
That's
gotta
right.
you gotta have the skills either way,
One
right?
one point I do want to throw in and mention, Colin, really quick before we move on, is
Sure.
one of the things I realize is that the more advanced technology gets and the latest and greatest platform to send out text messaging or to cold caller, the more archaic marketing is becoming. And what I mean by that is many people are not doing what I did early on to get deals. When I first got started, it was direct mail and door knocking, and then I started working with bird dogs. I would put ads in the newspaper. This is back 2006, 2007,
Sure.
2008.
Yeah.
I'm working with students now that are doing these old school things that are not sexy, and they're generating leads and pulling deals. So don't always be looking for the shiny marketing object or the next latest and greatest thing, but sometimes going back to the fundamentals, also
I
works.
I think that's particularly pertinent now that there's so many big players in the market. I mean, Wales, Triton International Homes, these are guys that own tens of thousands of rental units. And if you're trying to outgun them, you're not going to do it. If you're trying to use better technology than them to find deals, you're not going to do it. I think that this one strategy is what you said: go old school, because they're not going old school. They're you know they got, 15, 25-year-olds sitting in front of 3 computer screens each trying to get leads. And if you're trying
That's
to
right.
compete with
That's right.
that, you're not going to do it.
And then here's the last thing I'll add is, and this is going to seem so obvious, but you wouldn't be surprised, but maybe some of your listeners would be surprised. When you market, make sure you pick up the phone. Pick up the phone and talk to people. I can't tell you how many people I know are still marketing and sending calls to a, which, look, it's a numbers game. And so if you do that enough, but we personally had challenges with that model of trying to get people back on the phone. And so when we do marketing, we like to pick up and we like to immediately establish rapport, build a relationship with people. And then follow-up is huge. Obviously, most of our deals were coming from the follow-up. So
Yeah. And do you have maybe one other piece of old school advice or an old school tip on how, wholesalers listening to this show or watching this show might kind of get stuck in and find a few off market deals at the beginning of the
yeah.
year that might be under the radar of the big high tech buyers?
Yeah. What immediately comes to mind for me, Colin, is the harder a niche list is to get your hands on, probably the more valuable and the better that list is. So in other
Mm-hmm.
words, if there's not a vendor or an online provider that can get you, I'll give you a perfect example. The water shutoff list here in South Florida, we could not find the vendor to provide us with a list where we can just swipe a credit card or pay and say, hey, give us the homes here in Miami-Dade County where the water has been shut off for at least 30 days. Like, to my knowledge, that list doesn't exist as far as being able to buy it somewhere. But by befriending certain people at the property appraiser's office and by jumping through a lot of hoops and going through a lot of no's, you can't get you that list, or that no, that list doesn't exist. We finally got our hands on that. And that proved to be a very profitable list for us, where we were sending direct mail and cold calling homes where, or owners of homes where the water had been shut off for 30 days or more. So that's an old school thing. The harder it is to get your hands on a list, if you have to go to the county and you got to jump through hoops, chances are the better that list is going to be, because other people aren't willing to do that.
That is an awesome tip. And that exact tip, finding a list of people whose water's been shut off, that's something you can apply to any county in the country. I'm sure it's hard to get in a lot of places. So yeah, fine. That's a really good exercise to try and get your hands on that list. That involves a lot of hustle and knocking on doors. And yeah, I love it. I love it. So let's, it's kind of winding down now, Alex. I mean, we're at the start of the new year now, and people are trying to understandably, have 2021 be a lot different than 2020 and kind of move on and have more success and less grief and uncertainty. I mean, a lot of people picked up some bad habits in 2020, or negative habits, or maybe had bad things happen to them that they haven't shaken off yet. I mean, and that's certainly more understandable than ever. But what kind of tips might you have for our listeners to, get out of maybe if they're in a negative funk, or just switch to a really positive mindset for 2021? Any mental tips or actionable tips you can give?
Yeah. Look, understand that you have the ability to turn things around. So if you're not happy where you're at, I think the first step is accepting responsibility and holding yourself accountable, and stop playing the blame game. I know many people listening have probably, look, at times I've fallen victim to that. I think if we're all honest, at some point or another, we've always, we've tended to shift the blame towards others, or say, well, that's great, Alex or Colin, you can do that because. So I think if you're in that mentality and you have that mindset, that's the first step. Understand that you are where you're at because of the choices, or because of the choices you've made, or the choices you haven't made. So once you accept that and realize all on you, for me, I think a burden is lifted, because now you have the ability to move in the direction you. And I think that also the second thing is you got to get clear. Again, what do you want? That's why I'm such a big advocate of having a written vision for your life on paper. And this is not a business plan. This is not how much money you want to make, but what do you want your life to look like? Get clear on what you want your life to look like, and then figure out how to build and or modify, tweak a business to support that vision and to support that lifestyle. So getting clarity is really, really important. Back to what I mentioned earlier, if you're not sure what you do want out of your life, start by flipping it and answer, okay, what do I not want in my life? Make sure that you're surrounded with the right people that are not naysayers, people that are going to lift you up, people that are going to, again, hold you accountable. So these are all things that, probably many of your listeners know. Goal setting is huge. One of the things I do in December, so I recently did this, is I go back and I look at the year and I say, okay, what went well? What worked?
Okay.
And then I look at, okay, what didn't work? What areas or skills do I need to develop? I always ask who, not what. So I think that's a trait of successful people, is ask who, not what. Oftentimes it's someone you need to know, or a connection you need to make, or a conversation you need to have, that's preventing you from getting from where you are to where you want to go. It's too many people are asking what or how. The
Mm-hmm.
how, you don't have to have that right now, but start by asking who. In fact, I think there's a book out there called Who Not, or something along those lines, that I'm forgetting the author and the title of the book.
You're
Um,
right. You're right. I think I can call that up. It is, yeah, Who Not How by Dan Sullivan.
That's the one. That's the one. And Dan Sullivan is the guy that talked from Strategic Coach, that talks about your unique ability and your genius zone, and really honing in and figuring out what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say.
Love it. That's fantastic advice, Alex. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think this is one of those podcasts that people can rewind several segments of it and just listen to it again. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. And so if people want to reach out to you and find out more about you and the different businesses you're involved in, how should they do it?
I appreciate the opportunity, Colin. It was awesome being on. If you're interested in learning more about the mastermind and the coaching program, ascendyoursuccess.com
Mm-hmm.
is one place to go. I also host a podcast called The Flip Empire Show. So if you
Okay.
go to flipempire.com, you can learn more about that. And it's really something I love this platform. We get to hop on here and we get to connect with awesome people and just, share what's working, what's not working. So I've been doing that since 2016 and really enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Alex. I'll put all those up in the show notes.
I appreciate you, Colin. Have a great day, everyone.
There you go, folks. That was Alex Pardo on Colin Podcasting About Real Estate Show 30. Hope you enjoyed it. I thought there was a ton of actionable tips in there. One of my favorite segments was the bit about how he talked about building that list of people who've gotten their water disconnected. That's such a really good example of how to hustle and how to get your hands on a potential buyer's list that the big guys just aren't going to do. And I think a lot of that old school hustle is going to be important in 2021. So use that type of example, that type of mindset to try and drive your business and your assets forward this year. I think that could go a long way. So really good advice from Alex. I also appreciate what he said about the importance of coaches and networking, and how if you're just in your own world all the time, doing your own thing, making all your own decisions, not having any sounding boards, not having anybody to bounce your ideas off, it can get tough. I mean, and it can get very difficult. You can make mistakes sometimes. You can forget to do stuff that might be obvious and easy. You can take the hard road when the easy road might have gotten you there quicker. So just having those chats and those conversations can make a big difference. And if you want to have a chat to me about your business that you're building or your portfolio that you're expanding, I'm very happy to do that. Just jump on the website, colininvestments.com, scroll to the bottom. You'll see some slots to book a chat with me. You can do that whenever you want. I definitely free up a couple of spaces in my calendar every week for that. And I really do get a kick out of it, and helping people whatever way I can, and sharing some of the tools that I've built and acquired over the years. So by all means do that. Thanks as always for your support. Do give me a rating or a review if you haven't done so. Just you literally take your phone out of your pocket, call up the main page of my podcast, scroll to the bottom, and you'll see some options there to leave a link or leave a 5-star review or a written review. So please go ahead and do that. I'd appreciate it, and share it with your friends and family if you think this content is good. If you think this show will be a good one for people to listen to in 2021, by all means share the message. And yeah, thanks again for tuning in. I'll be back soon with show 31, but for now, this is Colin Murphy signing out of the first show of the new year. Belated Happy New Year again, guys. I'm out of here, but I'll be back next week. Bye-bye.